The night market was alive with noise, light, and shadows. Giant lamps hung from rusty chains, swinging slowly in the wind, casting long beams over rows of cages. Each cage held something alive. Some creatures were small and trembling, others big and dangerous. The air smelled of oil, smoke, and fear. In one of the smaller cages sat a human woman. Her hair was tangled, her clothes torn, and her skin marked with bruises. A cold metal collar glowed faintly around her neck, a chain running. From it to the bars, she sat with her knees pulled close to her chest, staring at the ground. She did not cry. Her tears had run dry a long time ago. Around her, alien traders moved like vultures. Tall figures with long limbs, eyes that glowed in the dark, and voices that hissed in a strange language. They pointed at her, argued over her weight, her strength, and her beauty as if she were an object. One of them tapped a screen, showing numbers and prices. Another laughed and said something in a deep voice that made the others chuckle. Not worth much, thin bones, weak muscles, one said in a language she barely understood. Still rare, very rare. Another replied, a human female. Pleasure animal, exotic, easy to train. Her stomach turned at the words. They didn't see her as a person, just as meat to be bought and sold. She had been here for days, maybe weeks. She couldn't tell anymore. Time in the market was strange. The lights never turned off. The noise never stopped. The auction bell rang, a deep metallic sound that echoed across the market. Crowds began to gather, aliens from every corner of the galaxy. Some had insect-like bodies. Some were covered in scales. Some moved like smoke. They all came to see the trade, to spend credits on living things. The trader in charge grabbed her chain and pulled. She stumbled forward, her bare feet scraping against the metal floor. The crowd stared at her as if she were a rare jewel. The trader lifted a small device and began reading her stats. Weight, 58 kilograms. Height, 1.6 meters, he announced. She is young, still healthy enough, excellent skin tone. No major damage to the nervous system. A murmur moved through the crowd. Hands, some with claws, some with smooth skin, lifted. To signal bids, the numbers rose quickly. She stood still, her heart pounding, but her face empty of expression. She had learned not to show fear. Fear made the buyers more interested. Then, in the back of the crowd, she saw him. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks. He was human, a tall man, dressed in a dark coat, his face partly hidden by the shadow of his hood, but it was the eyes that caught her, human eyes, not the cold alien glows she had seen for so long. His gaze was fixed on her, not with hunger, not with greed, but with something else she couldn't name. The auction went on, the bids climbing higher. The man in the hood stepped forward. The aliens nearby moved away from him, whispering, humans didn't belong here, and they certainly didn't buy other humans. He raised his hand, speaking a number far higher than the last bid. The crowd went silent for a moment. The trader's eyes widened. Then he smiled. Profit was profit. No. One else challenged the price. The trader slammed the gavel and shouted, sold. Her chain was handed to the man. Up close, she could see the small scars on his hands. The firm set of his jaw. He didn't smile, didn't speak to her, just turned and began walking away, pulling her gently but firmly through the crowd. As they passed the cages, she glanced at the other creatures. Some looked at her with pity, others with envy. The noise of the market faded behind them, replaced by the hum of night winds and the distant sound of ships. She didn't know who this man was or why he had bought her. She only knew one thing. She had to find a way to escape before it was too late. But as they reached the docking area, she noticed something strange. The guards at the gate looked at the man and stepped aside without a word. Their eyes held a flicker of fear. as if they knew him and did not want trouble. She wondered if she had just stepped out of one prison and into another. The metal floor under her feet vibrated as they approached a dark ship. The ramp lowered with a hiss, and warm air spilled out. The man stopped, turned his head slightly, and looked at her. For the first time since the auction, in a low, calm voice, he said, "You're safe now." For the moment, safe, she thought. She wasn't sure she believed him, but something in his voice, something in those human eyes, made her hesitate before running, far above the market. A shadow moved across the stars, a ship, larger than anything she had seen before. Watching, waiting, and deep inside it, someone whispered her name. The ramp of the ship closed behind them with a deep metallic sound. The woman stood still, her wrists chained, her eyes darting around the dimly lit corridor. The air inside was warmer than the market, but it carried the faint smell of burnt metal and old fuel. The man walked ahead without looking back. His footsteps slow but steady. She studied him. His coat was heavy and worn, the kind of clothing meant for long journeys. A thin layer of dust clung to it, as if he had been traveling. For days without rest, there was a small device on his wrist, its green light blinking every few seconds. He moved like someone who knew exactly where he was going. Finally, he stopped and turned toward her. "You can sit," he said quietly, pointing to a small bench built into the wall. She hesitated, unsure if it was an order or a kindness. In the market, any sign of weakness could be used against you. But she sat, her back straight, ready to move if he tried anything. The man removed his hood, and for the first time, she saw his face clearly. His skin was pale from years under artificial lights. A faint scar ran from his temple to the corner of his jaw. His eyes were a deep brown, steady, sharp, and strangely sad. "What is your name?" he asked. Her lips stayed pressed together. "Fine," he said. "I won't force you to speak." He stepped to a small control panel and pressed a button. The floor beneath her feet vibrated. The ship was preparing to launch. Through the small window above the bench, she saw the market shrinking behind them. The cages, the lights, the noise, all fading into the distance. She should have felt relief, but her mind screamed. One thought, why did he buy me? Finally, she broke the silence. "You paid too much for me," she said quietly. Her voice hoarse from days without water. The man looked over his shoulder. "I didn't pay for you," he said, his voice firm. "I paid to get you out." She frowned. "That's the same thing," she muttered. "No," he replied. Walking closer, the others. "They would have chained you until you were nothing but a tool." He paused, his eyes locking with hers. "I know what they do to humans in this part of the galaxy." Her chest tightened. "You're human too." She said slowly, "Yes." He replied, "But I wasn't born in your colony." He took a seat across from her. "I came here for a reason, and you are part of it." Before she could ask, a sharp alarm rang through the ship. The man stood instantly, checking the blinking device on his wrist. "They've marked you," he said under his breath. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice rising. "It means," he said, moving quickly to the cockpit. "Someone put a tracker on you before the sale." Her stomach dropped. "They're coming after us." "Yes," he said, "and they won't stop until they have you." The ship's engines roared as he increased speed through the cockpit window. She could see small lights in the distance. Moving fast hunters, she gripped the side of the chair. "Why me?" "There were other humans in those cages," she said. He glanced at her. "You're different," he said simply, "and they know it." The ship jerked as something exploded in the distance. He pulled the controls sharply, weaving between floating chunks of metal from an old wreck. The hunters followed, their engines burning bright. She tried to process his words different. They know it, but her thoughts were drowned by the sound of weapons firing. "Can we outrun them?" she asked. "No," he said, but we can make them lose us." He flicked several switches, and the lights inside the ship dimmed to red. "Hold on to something," he warned. She grabbed the straps of the seat as the ship spun sharply, plunging. Into a thick cloud of space dust, the hunters disappeared from view. But the danger didn't fade. "They'll scan the area," he said, lowering his voice. "We have a few minutes before they find us again. Then tell me," she said. "Why did you really take me?" The man looked at her for a long moment. "My sister," he said finally. "She was taken by the same syndicate that held you." His voice tightened. "I couldn't save her. But I can save you." Her throat felt tight. "And after you save me?" She asked. "That," he said, turning back to the controls, "depends on you." The ship moved quietly now, hidden in the dust cloud, but far away, beyond the shadows. The hunters' lights began to glow again. They were patient. They knew their prey had nowhere to run forever. The man adjusted the course, his eyes narrowing. "If we survive this," he said, "you'll understand everything." She leaned back in her seat. She wasn't sure if she could trust him, but for the first time in a long time, a small part of her wanted to. Outside, the stars watched silently, and somewhere in the darkness, another ship turned toward them. The hum of the ship was steady, like a heartbeat. The woman sat in silence, her mind racing. The man had told her he was here to save her. But she had heard those words before, from people who only wanted to use her. Trust was a luxury she could not afford. He was in the cockpit now, checking scanners, eyes fixed on the screens every few seconds. His fingers moved quickly across the controls, adjusting the ship's path. She watched him from the doorway, her wrists still bound. He had not tightened the chains. Maybe he thought she wouldn't try to run. He was wrong. Her eyes scanned the small room on the wall, near the floor. Was a panel slightly loose at the corner? If she could pry it open, maybe she could reach the wires inside and disable something. She waited until he leaned forward too. Check the radar. Then she bent down and slipped her fingers under the edge of the panel. The metal was cold and sharp, but it shifted with a quiet click. Inside was a bundle of colored wires and a small maintenance hatch. Big, enough for her to crawl through if she twisted her body. She glanced at him again. He was still watching the scanners. Unaware, her heart pounded as she slipped one foot into the hatch. The space inside smelled of oil and dust. It was narrow, forcing her to move slowly, her shoulders scraping the walls. She could hear the hum of the engines through the metal. Every vibration told her she was crawling deeper into the ship's bones. Behind her, the sound of footsteps. "Don't," his voice said sharply, echoing through the metal walls. She froze. "I'm serious," he said, his tone calm but firm. "If you go in there, you won't make it far." She pushed forward anyway. Her hands gripped the next rung of a maintenance ladder, pulling herself deeper. She heard him sigh, not angry, not surprised, just tired. The passage ahead opened into a small storage compartment. Inside were crates stacked high, their surfaces marked with alien symbols she couldn't read. She pulled herself out of the hatch and scanned the room. There, on the far wall, was a narrow emergency door. She rushed to it, her fingers searching for the release latch. The door hissed, and a sliver of cold light spilled inside. Beyond it, she could see the endless black of space through a thin walkway connected to the ship's outer section. If she could reach an escape pod, if this ship even had one, she could vanish before he caught her. Then she heard the click of boots behind her. "You're fast," he said, stepping into the storage room. His coat swayed slightly as he moved closer, but not faster than me. She turned to face him, her hands clenched. "Let me go," she said, her voice low but steady. "If you stay," he replied, "you have a chance to live." "If I stay," she shot back, "I'll just end up in another cage." Something flickered in his eyes, not anger, but pain. "You think I don't know what that's like?" he said, taking a slow step forward. "I've been in a cage too. I swore I'd never let it happen to anyone else if I could stop it." She didn't move. "Prove it," she said. For a moment, they stared at each other, the cold light from the open door painting their faces in silver. Then the ship's alarm blared loud, urgent. He tapped the device on his wrist. Reading the flashing symbols, "They've found us," he muttered. Through the doorway, she could see faint lights moving in the distance, hunters closing in. "We can fight them together," he said quickly, but she shook her head. "I don't even know your name, Rian," he answered without hesitation. "Now decide, stay and fight, or run and die." Her eyes shifted to the narrow walkway leading into the darkness. If she went that way, she might escape. Or she might be lost in space before she even found a pod. If she stayed, she would be trapped with him, but maybe alive. A blast shook the ship, throwing her against the wall. The crates rattled, one toppling over and spilling strange metal tools across the floor. Rian grabbed her arm and pulled her away from the emergency door just as another blast hit, sealing it shut with a loud clang. "They don't want you dead," he said, pulling her back toward the cockpit. "They want you alive, and that's worse." They stumbled into the main cabin. The sound of weapons fire rattling the hull, Rian slid into the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls. "Strap in," he ordered. She hesitated, but when the ship lurched violently, she grabbed the seat straps and buckled in. The hunters were close now, their ships surrounding them like predators, but Rian's eyes narrowed. "We're not done yet," he said, and slammed a lever forward. The stars outside twisted, the light bending into a sharp tunnel as the ship jumped into a hidden route between systems. The sudden shift pressed her against the seat, her vision blurring. When the pressure eased, she looked out, nothing but black space and quiet stars. Rian leaned back, breathing hard. "You're safe," he said, his voice rough. For now, she didn't answer, because somewhere deep inside, she knew this escape attempt was only the beginning, and the real danger had not even started yet. The ship drifted in silence. Only the faint hum of the engines and the soft clicks of cooling metal filled the air. The woman sat in the co-pilot's seat, her hands gripping the straps across her chest. Her breathing was slow now, but her heart still thudded hard. Rian leaned back in his seat, eyes scanning the radar for any sign of pursuit. Nothing. For the first time in hours. The hunters were gone, but he didn't relax. "They'll find us again," he said, his voice low. "They always do." She turned toward him, her voice sharp. "You keep saying they, but you haven't told me who they are." He met her gaze for a moment, then looked away. "It's not an easy answer," he said. "And it's not something you'll want to hear. I've been sold in a cage," she said coldly. "I think I can handle the truth." Rian studied her face, then took a slow breath. "You weren't sold for pleasure," he said. "You weren't even sold for labor." Her eyes narrowed. "Then why?" He tapped a command on the console, and a small holographic screen appeared between them. It showed a strange image, a human brain, glowing with pale light next to it. Alien symbols and numbers scrolled like falling rain. "This," Rian said, "is the reason." He pointed to the glowing shapes on the image. "Inside the human brain, there's something no other species in the galaxy has a neural resonance pattern that can't be copied or built artificially." Her brow furrowed. "In plain words." Rian's voice was grim. "In plain words, your mind can power alien technology in ways their machines can't. A living human brain can be linked to their systems to make their ships faster, their AI smarter, their weapons deadlier." Her stomach turned. "They plug people into machines." "Yes," he said quietly. "They call it integration. It keeps the person alive, but they lose everything that makes them human. No will, no freedom, just a living processor." She sat back, her throat tight. The images on the hologram shifted, showing dark rooms filled with motionless humans connected to tall machines, their eyes dull and unfocused. Some were children, some old, some young like her. She looked away quickly. How do you know all this? Rian's jaw clenched, because my sister was taken for it. He didn't look at her, his eyes fixed on the empty space outside the cockpit window. She was 15. They came at night, took her from our colony, and by the time I tracked her down, she was already integrated. His voice grew heavy. She didn't even know me. She just stared. The machine was using her thoughts for something I couldn't understand. I tried to disconnect her, but he stopped, closing his eyes for a second. She died before I could get her out. The woman swallowed hard. The silence between them was heavy. Finally, she spoke. So you saved me because I reminded you of her? No, he said firmly, looking at her again. I saved you because they weren't just going to integrate you. They were going to take you to the core. Vault, she frowned. What's that? It's where they keep the rarest humans, he said, his tone dark. Those who have something special in their neural pattern, something they can't find in anyone else. Your scan at the market flagged you as one of them. That's why. The bidding was so high, and that's why the hunters won't stop. Her pulse quickened. What's so special about me? I don't know yet, he admitted, but whatever it is, it's valuable enough for them to risk war to get you. She leaned back, her mind spinning. So, what now? Keep running forever. Rian shook his head. No, we can't keep running. We have to go to someone who can erase your neural signature from the galaxy's data systems. Her brows drew together. Erase me? Yes, he said. If they can't find you in the databases, they can't track you. But getting to that person won't be easy. He's deep in syndicate territory. She gave a bitter laugh. Of course he is, Rian allowed himself. A faint smile. You'll like him. He hates the syndicate almost as much as I do. Before she could respond, the radar beeped sharply. A single blip appeared on the edge of the scanner. Rian's expression darkened. They're faster than I thought. She gripped the armrest. Hunters. No, he said slowly. Worse. Through the cockpit window, a shadow emerged from the darkness, a massive black ship, shaped like a spearhead. Its surface shimmered with strange patterns, like light moving underwater at its center. A single glowing red eye pulsed. Watching them, Rian's voice was tight. That's a core enforcer. They don't chase unless they've been ordered by the High Syndicate itself. Her skin went cold. What does that mean for us? It means, Rian said, his hand moving to the controls. They're not just hunting you anymore. His eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. They're hunting us. The black ship began to move, and the stars around them seemed to vanish into its shadow. The black ship loomed in the darkness. Its glowing red eye locked on them like a predator sizing up prey. Even from a distance, its presence was heavy, the kind of weight you could feel in your chest. The woman gripped the edge of her seat. Her knuckles white, Rian's eyes never left the controls. They've locked on, he said flatly. The ship's radar beeped faster, each pulse a warning. They're charging their weapons. Can we outrun them? She asked quickly. Rian shook his head. No ship can outrun a core enforcer. Then, what do we do? We survive, he said, and slammed the throttle forward. The small ship shot ahead. The stars turning into streaks of light, but the enforcer followed without effort. Gliding through the void like a shadow that refused to be shaken every few seconds, its red eye flared, scanning, tracking. Learning their every move, a sudden alarm blared. They've locked a grav beam. On us, Rian muttered. The woman frowned. What's that? It means they're about to pull us in like a fish on a line. The ship jerked violently. Her body was thrown against the straps as the pull of the enforcer's grav beam gripped them. The view outside twisted stars bending as if the universe itself was being pulled toward the black ship Rion. She shouted, "I know." He snapped, hands flying over the controls. He slammed a switch, and the lights inside flickered to deep blue. The ship's engines roared, shifting into a high-energy burn. A deep hum filled the cabin as the grav beams. Pull began to weaken, but the Enforcer didn't let go. Instead, its red eye brightened. A beam of pure white light shot past their hull. Missing them by meters, the woman's heart pounded. "They're trying to cut us apart," she breathed. "No," Rion said grimly. "That was a warning shot. They want us alive." Another blast rocked the ship. Sparks flew from the overhead panels and a burning smell filled the air. "We can't take many more hits," Rion said. "Then what?" She asked. "Then we make them think they got us," he replied, before she could ask what he meant. Rion flipped a series of switches. The ship's engines went dead, and the lights dropped to emergency red to anyone scanning their vessel. Would look like a drifting wreck. The Enforcer slowed its approach, circling like a vulture. Through the cockpit window, they could see the massive shadow moving closer. Her breath caught. The size of it made their ship look like an insect. "Rion," she whispered. "Not yet," he said quietly, eyes locked on the radar. The Enforcer extended a long mechanical arm toward them. It opened like claws, reaching to grab their ship. The moment the claws were inches away, Rion slammed the controls. Forward, the engines roared to life, blasting full power directly into the Enforcer's scanners. The sudden burst blinded the red eye. The Enforcer staggered in space, its grip missing them by meters. Rion pulled the ship hard to the left, diving toward a nearby asteroid field. The woman clung to the seat as jagged rocks the size of cities spun past them. The Enforcer followed, but now its movements were slower, more careful. "This is suicide," she shouted over the roar of the engines. "No," Rion said, weaving. "Between two massive spinning asteroids, this is the only way to lose them." The Enforcer fired again. A blast hit an asteroid beside them, shattering it into thousands of burning fragments. The shards spun through space, slamming into their hull like gunfire. Rion swerved sharply, avoiding a chunk the size of their ship. Then a loud alarm screamed from the console. Her eyes darted to the display. A second blip had appeared on the radar, moving fast. "There's another one," she gasped. Rion's eyes narrowed. "That's not an Enforcer," he muttered. "That's a Scov ship." Before she could ask, the comm system crackled to life. A deep voice spoke, thick with an alien accent. "Rian Cade, you are in dangerous territory." Rion's hands tightened on the controls. "I know that voice," he said under his breath. The voice continued, "We'll take the girl off your hands. You won't live to reach your destination otherwise." The woman's heart pounded. "They know about me?" she whispered. "They all know about you," Rion said, "which means the Enforcer isn't our only problem." The radar now showed two ships, the Black Enforcer and the Scout vessel, closing in from opposite sides. Rion's eyes darted across the asteroid field, searching for an opening. "There," he said suddenly. He spun the ship toward a narrow gap between two massive spinning rocks. The space between them was so tight it looked impossible. "Are you insane?" She shouted. "Completely," he replied. The ship shot forward, scraping the edges of the rocks as they passed through. Behind them, the Scav ship tried to follow and failed. It slammed into one of the asteroids, exploding into a brief flash of light. The woman's relief was short-lived. The Enforcer was still coming, slipping between the asteroids with impossible precision. "Nothing shakes them," she said. Rion's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we don't shake them," he said. "We trap them." He dove deeper into the asteroid field, heading for a cluster of massive, unstable rocks as they neared. The sensors screamed warnings. The rocks were pulling toward each other under strange gravity forces. Anything caught between them would be crushed. "Hold your breath," Rian muttered. They shot through the collapsing gap. A second later, the rocks slammed together. The Enforcer, too large to fit through in time, pulled up sharply its pursuit. Finally broken, silence filled the cockpit. Her hands were shaking. "You did it," she said softly. Rian didn't answer. His eyes were still scanning the radar. Because in the corner of the display, a new signal had appeared, and it was already inside the asteroid field with them. The asteroid field was silent. Only the faint rumble of the ship's engines and the soft hiss of recycled air filled the cabin. The woman leaned forward in her seat, her eyes locked on the new signal flashing on the radar. It was moving fast. Weaving through the asteroids with skill, Rian's jaw tightened. "That's no syndicate ship," he muttered. "Then who is it?" "She asked someone who knows these rocks as well as I do," he said grimly. His fingers danced over the controls, pulling up a grainy visual feed from the rear scanners. The image flickered. A sleek silver craft appeared, its hull marked with strange claw-like emblems. The woman didn't recognize them, but Rian did. "Raiders," he said. "They don't care who you are, as long as they can sell you to the highest bidder." Her stomach turned, "So we just escaped the Enforcer. For this?" He gave her a quick glance. "They're not as bad as the Syndicate." She raised an eyebrow. "That's comforting." The silver craft drew closer. Suddenly, the cum system crackled to life. "Well, well." A smooth voice purred Rian. "Cade, I didn't think you'd come back to my hunting ground." Rian's hands froze on the controls. "Varric," he said flatly, "you're still alive." The voice laughed. "Alive and rich, my friend, and about to get richer." The woman's eyes darted between them. "You know him?" "Unfortunately," Rian said. "He's not just a raider. He's the one who tipped off the Syndicate about my sister." Her breath caught, "And now he's after me." "Yes," Rian said, his voice cold, "but this time, he's not getting what he wants." The radar beeped again. The silver craft had deployed small drones, 6 of them, darting ahead to cut off every possible escape route. "They're hurting us," she realized. "Exactly," Rian said. "But we're not sheep." The first drone fired. A blast, skimming past their hull and sending a shudder through the ship. Rian twisted the controls sharply, weaving between 2 tumbling rocks. The woman's stomach flipped as they spun. "You're going to crash us." She shouted. "Not if I time it right," he said. His eyes were locked on a massive asteroid ahead. Its surface cracked and glowing faintly with pockets of unstable gas. 2 more blasts hit nearby. The silver craft was closer now, its weapons charging for a direct hit. The woman's breath came fast. "Rian, hold on," he snapped. He pushed the throttle forward, heading straight for the glowing cracks in the asteroid. Varric's voice came again, mocking. "Running into..." "A bomb won't save you," Cade, who said. "I'm running into it." Rian replied. At the last second, he pulled the ship into a steep climb. Skimming the asteroid surface as they passed, he fired 2 shots into the cracks. The gas pockets ignited instantly. A chain of explosions ripped through the asteroid, sending shockwaves and flaming debris in every direction. The woman clung to the seat as the blast waved through their ship forward. Through the viewport, she saw the silver craft swerve hard. One of the explosions caught its wing, tearing a deep gash in its hull. But Varric wasn't finished. His voice came through the cum again, angrier now. "You just cost me a lot of credits. Cade, now I'm taking both of you." Rian's expression hardened. "Not today." He spun the ship toward a large shadow in the distance, a jagged asteroid. Shaped like a claw, the woman frowned. "What's there?" "A Syndicate relay station," Rian said. "You're flying us straight into their base." "Exactly," he said. "They won't risk firing at us if it means hitting the Syndicate's own tech." The relay station emerged from the darkness. A cluster of metal spires clinging to the rock like a nest of knives. Bright red lights swept the space around it, scanning for ships the moment they approached. A voice crackled over a different channel. "Unidentified vessel, state your purpose. This is Cade." Rian said quickly, "Delivering priority cargo for core transport. Code Sigma 9. The woman's eyes widened. "You're pretending I'm their prisoner." "Only way they let us in without questions," he said. The station's defenses powered down just enough for them to slip through. Varric's ship hung back, unwilling to draw the syndicate's wrath. Rian guided their ship into the docking bay. The heavy doors sealing shut behind them. Inside, the bay was dark, lit only by strips of red along the walls. The woman unstrapped herself slowly. "You just locked us in with the syndicate," she whispered. Rian nodded. "Better the devil you know." As the ramp lowered, shadows moved at the edge of the bay. Tall figures in syndicate armor, weapons raised. A voice echoed through the chamber. "Cade, you have something that belongs to us." The woman's heart pounded. Rian stepped in front of her. "Not anymore," he said. He reached into his coat, pulling out a small black device. With a glowing core, her eyes widened. It was the same kind of tracker the hunters used. Before the syndicate soldiers could react, Rian smashed the device against the metal floor. It burst in a flash of light, sending a shockwave through the bay. The soldiers staggered back, their weapons flickering. Rian grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a side corridor. "What did you just do?" she gasped. "Cut the syndicate's eyes on us," he said. "But now we have about 2 minutes before they get them back." They ran through the shadowed corridor, alarms blaring behind them. The final confrontation had begun, and there was no going back. The corridor was a maze of shadows and red warning lights. Alarms echoed through the station, each pulse louder than the last. The woman ran behind Rian, her breath sharp, her legs burning. The sound of syndicate boots pounded the metal floors. Somewhere close, Rian stopped at a locked door. He pulled a small device from his belt and pressed it against the control panel. Soft buzz, a spark. The door slid open. Inside, the air was cold. Rows of tall glass pods lined the walls, each one glowing faint blue. The woman froze. Inside the pods were humans. Men, women, even children, their eyes half open, staring into nothing. Thin cables ran from their heads and spines into the walls. Their chests rose and fell slowly, alive, but not living. Her voice shook. "There." Integrated, Rian's jaw tightened. "Yes. This is the syndicate storage before transport to the core vault." She stepped closer to one of the pods. A girl inside couldn't have been more than 16. Her lips moved faintly, like she was dreaming. The woman's hands curled into fists. "We can't just leave them." Rian met her gaze. "I didn't plan to." He knelt by a control panel, his fingers flying over the keys. "This will take time. The system is built to resist force shutdown." The alarms grew louder. From the corridor outside came a sharp metallic clang, the sound of soldiers forcing another door. The woman moved to the pods, pressing her hands against the glass. Her reflection stared back at her, pale and scared. But the sight of the people inside gave her a surge of resolve. "Tell me what to do," she said. Rian glanced at her. "See that lever by the far wall? Pull it when I say." She ran across the room, weaving between the pods. Her fingers gripped the cold metal lever. "Ready," she called. The door behind them exploded inward. Syndicate soldiers poured into the room, weapons raised. "Now!" Rian shouted. She yanked the lever down. A deep hum filled the room as the glass pods hissed and cracked open. Cables detached automatically. Dropping to the floor like dead snakes, the humans inside stumbled forward, dazed and weak, but free. The soldiers opened fire. Rian pulled her behind a console, returning shots with his sidearm. "Get them moving," he yelled. She turned to the freed captives. "This way," she shouted, waving them toward the far exit. Some could barely walk. She helped lift a boy onto his feet, urging him forward. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burning metal. Rian shot out a ceiling light, plunging the far half of the room into shadow. It gave them enough cover to push the group into the corridor. They ran, the sound of pursuit close behind. At every turn, Rian fired at security cameras, trying to erase their trail. The woman kept the freed humans moving, her voice steady even as fear knotted in her stomach. They reached a docking bay, smaller than the one they'd entered through. In the center sat an old cargo shuttle, its paint faded but its engine lights still glowing faintly. Rian ran to the hatch, tapping in a code. The door opened with a hiss. "Everyone inside," he barked. The humans hurried aboard, some collapsing into the worn seats. The woman stayed by the ramp, counting them all, 23. Her heart pounded. They were really doing this. Rian jumped into the pilot's seat. The woman strapped herself in beside him. "Can this thing fly?" she asked. "It only needs to fly long enough," he said, flipping switches. The shuttle rose from the floor. The bay doors began to open, revealing the dark stretch of space beyond. But as they lifted, the comm system crackled. A deep voice filled the cabin. "You cannot run from the syndicate, Cade." The woman's blood ran cold. The Enforcer's captain, Rian, didn't reply, his focus locked on the stars ahead. Outside, the massive black spearhead ship was waiting, its red eye burning brighter than ever. "They're blocking the exit," she said. "Not for long," Rian replied. He steered the shuttle toward the asteroid field that surrounded the station. The Enforcer followed, firing warning blasts that lit up the rocks. The shuttle weaved between jagged stone behind them. The Enforcer's massive bulk tore through the field. "They'll crush us," she said. "Not if we give them a reason to turn back," Rian said. He reached under the console and pulled out a small metal case. Inside was a glowing sphere. She recognized it instantly, the Syndicate tracker core he'd smashed earlier. "I rebuilt it," he said, and gave it a gift. He slammed the sphere into the shuttle's launch chute and hit a switch. The core shot out into space, spinning toward the Enforcer. A second later, it exploded in a blinding flash. The blast wave slammed into the Enforcer, forcing it to swerve violently. The shuttle shot out of the asteroid field and into open space. The Enforcer didn't follow, its systems flickering from the blast. The woman exhaled slowly. "We made it," she said. Rian gave her a faint smile. For now, the freed humans sat quietly behind them, some whispering to each other, some staring out at the stars. The woman turned to Rian. "Why risk everything for them? For me?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because humans are worth more than the price someone puts on them," he said, "and because you reminded me what that means." She held his gaze. For the first time since the market, she felt something she'd thought was gone forever. Hope. The shuttle disappeared into the dark. And somewhere far away, the galaxy kept turning. But for 24 humans aboard one stolen ship, the future had just opened up.